Well, build my gallows and build them high. Makes a long time climbing before I die. I want the chance that's bit in his eye. Well, he gave me bars, but I can see between to a dusty yard and a long gone green. They call that freedom, if you know what I mean. And I drown my sorrows, but the whiskey's gone. I'm sober as a judge.
Hello everybody, welcome to Longbangers. This is episode 82. I'm Matty. I'm joined tonight by, first of all, John, looking splendid in his 2002 vintage Hibs top. John, how are you doing?
I'm alright. Aye. Do you know, I actually thought I'd lost this top or left it with an ex-girlfriend. You know how ex-girlfriends, wives or whatever, they want to wear your football tops. So I thought I'd lost this many, many moons ago. Turns out I'm just an ignorant bastard that's been in the wardrobe that entire time.
Decent. Who was there? There was a Tory MP. I mean, years ago when actually sex scandals and that would be enough to end an MP's career before they were allowed to just get away with fucking anything. There was a Tory MP with the Chelsea strip. Was that David Mellon? Was that his name?
David Mellon, aye. Good looking boy.
Aye. A weird looking guy, yeah. Anyway, I just, when you talk about your missus wearing it, I wasn't implying you were a Tory MP, John, so didn't get offended.
No, that's all right.
And we're also joined tonight all the way from Vietnam with Richard Harkis from Harkis Consultancy Group. Richard, how you doing?
Not bad, how are you? Not bad at all.
Hi, all good here. Well, we're going to kick off. We've got quite a lot to cover tonight. We're going to briefly look at the Rangers game last midweek, and then we'll look at Hibs win at Dundee United from the weekend. Talk a wee bit about the transfer activity today, or lack of transfer activity, whichever way you want to look at it, and then look ahead to St Mirren tomorrow night. But to kick things off, Richard, you're the guest on the show. Tell us a wee bit about who you are and what you do.
The shortened down version is I'm former football coach. I still do a bit of coaching here and there. Moved out to Asia about 10 years ago to come out here to coach. I moved out to Singapore, then was kind of through Thailand, and I've been in Vietnam 6 years now. Last two and a bit years, I started my own consultancy group, my own consultancy company, because I'd built up a large network, not just in Europe, but across Southeast Asia, in football leagues, clubs, best practices, social media. I knew a lot of the scouts, coaches and stuff like that. So basically I work in football education, football commercial operations and general football operations. So like coach education, scout education, shirt sleeve sponsors, stadium naming rights, some of the boring stuff that goes on behind the scenes that people aren't aware of. But yeah, just generally kind of fortunate enough to have a career in doing something that I love, and I'm also a Hibs fan as well. So yeah, that's the condensed down version, or I'll end up talking for the and I'll not be interested anyway. But
You probably surprise yourself there. Now, I've follow you on social media, and it's clear it's something that you love. It's good to work in something that you love. Yaya Toure, am I right? You've got a connection there as well.
That's right. I'm the Asian intermediary, and I do his PR for him in Southeast Asia. So it's kind of helping him find sponsors, and also there's been a lot of interest for him to possibly come out here and play in Southeast Asia. He was in China. The common belief is that he'd retired, but that was because his previous agent came out saying he'd retired, whereas he hasn't actually retired. He's gone into coaching, so we've had him finishing his UEFA B licence, and he's on to his A soon. He's been at Blackburn and QPR, but we also had him training and still staying fit. Obviously, because of COVID and stuff like that, it's been difficult for him to get into clubs and train. So because of the Premiership rules and the Championship rules in England. So he'd moved back from China, and he's in London just now. So I had him training at Leyton Orient, and he'd been up at Blackburn as well while he was doing his UEFA stuff. But yeah, there's still a kind of a possible season or two left in his legs, but the longer it goes on, he's not at a club, the more he's kind of sliding off into just kind of moving directly into coaching, which kind of gives me an interest in just an interesting kind of day that everything can change. And, you know, I could be speaking to the, I don't know what, a La Liga team 1 minute and then getting a phone call from somebody in the Bundesliga. And I'm kind of like, on one hand, wearing the business hat, and on the other head, I'm kind of going, well, I'm a boy for Leith. And I got a random phone call from China about 6 months ago with this guy trying to push me, this player. And I said, look, I'm a qualified, and I only became a qualified intermediary so that I was able to give players best advice on what agents might be trying to sell to them, and what does this mean, and what does this boot deal mean, and how can you make money from this commercial activity, and if they want you to do this, and this is your get out clause on your contract because of this. So I just said to the guy, I'm not really interested in having any players. I don't want to be. I come from the Brian Clough school of, I don't know if you ever heard the Brian Clough quote when Clough said, when I was a boy, there was only one agent, and his name was 007, and he got paid for and he got paid for fucking women, not football clubs. And so I always kind of thought that was the way I thought of agents as well. So I didn't really want to be one of them. And then, of course, the guy said, look, it's Yaya Toure. And I said, right, okay, that changes things a little bit. So I had a phone call with him and jumped on him. Yeah, and that's the situation that I'm at with him just now. So there's a couple of clubs interested in Europe. There's a couple of clubs that are interested. I'm just going into coaching. I'm still trying to get him to come into Southeast Asia, but he had a deal in Australia, but that fell through because of the recent COVID outbreak. So that didn't go through, which was a bit disappointing. But yeah, everything's up in the air. Everything's on its arse because of COVID at the moment. So yeah.
And I think you've offered mates rates to Hibs for him. First and foremost.
Of course, obviously. Yeah, of course. I'd pay his bus fare and everything.
Do you make sure to remember and get him a cake on his birthday?
Do you know what? It's funny you said that, right? His birthday just passed. My mate in Singapore sent me a message and he goes, Jaya Toure's birthday. And I messaged him back and I went, you tell me that for? Because it was early in the morning and my brain hadn't woke up yet. And I said, what you tell me that for? And then he was like, birthday cake. And I was like, aye, right, yeah.
So how did it come about then? You moved over. It's quite a big leap to move from Scotland to Asia. How did that come about?
It was so I was living in Glasgow. I was up in Castlemilk at the time, and I was coaching a club there called Deid Tornadoes, a youth club. And the only reason I was able to, I was working there as a youth worker. They found out that I used to play football for Scotland schoolboys and stuff when I was younger. And they said, we want you to come in and coach us. And Glasgow City Council basically said, I'm not allowed to coach the kids unless I have my SFA coaching badges and stuff. So I said, so what happens now then? So they paid for me to go through my lower level coaching certificates. And then the boys at the Deid Tornadoes were just fantastic, and they just started to win everything. I think and to be honest, it made me look good, but the reality was these guys were just something special. You know, this is the same place that's churned out a lot of great players for Rangers and Celtic. And I started coaching a club up the West End of Glasgow. It was Kenny Moyes' team, Broomhouse. So Broomhouse have now kind of got bigger and bigger and bigger, and so it's Davy Moyes' brother, Kenny Moyes, who's an agent. So he brought me in to coach their team, and I did relatively successful with them and managed to kind of make a bit of a name for myself in youth coaching. And I was always getting emails saying to come and coach this team. And I said to my mate jokingly, it's one of the best conversations I've ever had with someone. And it's kind of something that I kind of try to tell a lot of people as well, just to take that leap of faith. But I got an email. I said to my mate, I says, I keep getting offered jobs overseas, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure. There's that apprehension. And he says, you'll not do it. And I says, well, I'll tell you what. See the next offer I get, no matter where it is, I'm going to go. And he says, nah. And the best thing he ever said to me was, nah, you'll not do it. It was about a few days later, I got an email from a guy in Singapore saying, can you come out and coach in our football school in Singapore? by the next day, I'd sold my toaster, my bed, my bedside cabinet, my fridge, my washing machine, my decks, my records, my PlayStation, everything, all out the door. And but a week and a half later, I was on a plane out to Singapore, and I've never kind of really looked back since then. So that was kind of the first route into it, other than being the youth worker in Scotland.
It's amazing the power of shite bag if you didn't.
Yeah,
mentally.
absolutely. Because do you know what? It was literally the best thing he ever said. He was like, "You'll not dare." He was like, "I will." He was like, "I so you will." And I came bouncing into the pub the next day, like, "So I got called for Singapore, and I'm off. I'll see you later." And best bit of grumpy mood I ever had. The best decision.
And so you'll have had I imagine you've gone away from Scotland with a good knowledge of Scottish football, seen the other side of it now. You're saying you're getting contacted for clubs all around the world pretty much. What's your impression of Scottish football now compared to what the rest of the world get up to?
So this is where we move into the realms of when you said to me before we went live here that we can edit stuff out later on. Because generally, it's if you're sitting in the inside looking out, it's very different from the outside looking in. And just what we were touching on earlier on, when you had Hibs fans talking about Cadden coming from Columbus Crew, and people saying, "Oh well, if he's coming in for America, and he's not going to be that match fit if he's playing in the MLS." And you're like, seriously, look at Almiron that's went from Atlanta United and is playing at Newcastle United. The level and the quality of some of the teams in the MLS would severely spank teams in the Scottish Premiership, and that's just the honest truth. And it's the same with a lot of clubs all over the world. And it's not just Hibs fans, and it's not just Rangers fans, and it's not just Hearts fans, but the way that they think these clubs are, there's just a huge arrogance attached to Scottish clubs. And the thing is, and I get it as well. I get it. Like, I grew up when I've saw 5 World Cups. I'm 44. I've born in '76, so Spain '82. I mean, Argentina '78, I don't remember, but Spain '82 was the first World Cup I remember. Then Mexico '86 and Italy '90, France '98. I remember all of these. And so you kind of come from this bit of where you think that you're a lot better than you actually are. We're a lot, again, you could talk about that forever as well, but Scottish football, I think, kind of, from the outside looking in now, it lacks a certain kind of motivation. It's kind of like, we're shite now, so English football's a lot bigger, and so what's the point? At least I still go to games, so I'm a real fan. And that kind of stops there, rather than saying, let's have a look at some new ideas. Let's try and do this. Perfect example, like when I was in when I was in the States, or a lot of the clubs here in Asia, you've got everyone's on your phone. You've got phone apps for this, phone apps for the next thing. I can drink beer in football stadiums out here. I mean, football's back here in Southeast. Well, in Vietnam, football's back. We just had a recent outbreak, so the V League here has been put on hold for a couple of weeks. But 2 weeks ago, I was at a game with 14,500 people watching Saigon FC versus Wohonulai, another kind of big Vietnamese club. And it's like they just do everything different. They don't always do it better, but they're willing to take a shot, and they're willing to try things, try a different approach. Whereas Scottish football seems to be very much, here's the club, here's the fans. There's a disconnect between the two, and we don't really care about addressing it because it's always been that way. And that's probably the worst thing that you could ever say in football, is that that's the way it's always been, so I'm not going to change it. And it just seems to be a bit of an epidemic in European football, not just necessarily Scottish football, of that's the way it's always been, so there's no point in changing it. Whereas in Asia, football's developing here, so they're willing to try new ideas just to see how it goes. And you're getting like 90,000 going to games in Indonesia for clubs in the second division. That I mean, you've never heard of most of the teams in the first division there, but the opportunity they have, and then that's what happens when you get players like a great example of that is Yarrick at Hibs, and then he was on at loan. Was it Gallifrey Dean or something? I think that he went on loan to. He played in the under-19s Philippines team, and he's had a debut in the first team for the Philippines. Philippines is a population of 120 million or so. Do you know what I mean? Most people know who Yarrick is. Yarrick's quite a famous person out in Southeast Asia. And I can say to Filipinos here, because there's quite a few Filipinos obviously in Vietnam, and they could say to my Yarrick, and they go, yeah, the green team, and they go, yeah. So it's interesting that Hibs, and I'm not getting anyone particularly at Hibs through this, because as I said, it's the same across a lot of Scottish clubs. They just don't realise how big potentially they could be in other countries. I mean, I'm going to kind of. One of the last things I'd also say is recently there was a player, a Van Dal from Vietnam, that went to Herenveen in the Eredivisie, the Dutch Eredivisie. They had, I think it was 23,000 that they had on their Facebook page. They signed Van Dal, and Van Dal made their social media jump to, I think it was something like 145,000 within 4 days. And I felt sorry for the Herenveen fans, because their website was just covered in Vietnamese. Everyone just speaking Vietnamese. They hadn't had the foresight to say, let's set up Herenveen Vietnam for the new fans coming in. And it was, I think he probably got about 10 to 20 minutes because it was more of a PR exercise than anything else.
Yeah.
The benefit was also he came back to Vietnam and he'd muscled out and stuff, and he had more. It wasn't that he didn't have the technical ability. It was more of the technical ability. It was just more of the tactical ability. In playing in the Dutch league, you're just going to learn a lot more. And I think there's a huge opportunity for Scottish clubs to farm players out and bring players over, so you can bring revenue this way and get some good PR. And all these companies in Asia that want to break into Europe, there's a revenue stream that way. Whereas the opposite way, get some of your guys out there, try it and play in these leagues, and partner. And I think Hibs are doing it, with Charleston in the US, to try and swap players around and stuff like that. But Southeast Asia, when people say, "Oh, you live in Asia," so I live in Southeast Asia. There's 644 million people here. I don't even really touch China. China, Korea, Japan, they're all kind of moved on, whereas we're 644 million people in the 10/11 countries in Southeast Asia. There's huge potential here, huge potential for clubs to partner, but it's trying to tell the Scottish clubs that and make them realise that and make them kind of take that leap into the unknown, very similar to what I did to move abroad, because they just don't seem to. I don't know if it's fear. I don't know if it's just, we don't have the money to do that. You say, well, it's not really going to cost you much money. But I understand that every penny's a hostage in Scotland as well. So there's all these different dynamics that you've got to think about. So, yeah.
So see, when you see Ron Gordon, and you mentioned it there, Charleston Battery, and the tie-up there, and Hibs have talked about having strategic partners with other clubs. I know they talked about European ones and some English ones. I don't think have quite come to fruition yet. What do you think it is that stops them going further afield to the likes of Southeast Asia?
In all honesty, I think it could be something as simple as they just don't have the staff. They just don't have the amount of staff to be able to deal with it. Because I know a lot of the guys that work at Hibs behind the scenes, and they're some of the most hardworking people. And to be fair, that goes for most of the clubs in Scotland that I speak to in the Premiership and the Championship. And they're incredibly hardworking, but they're massively overworked as well. And for them to then take on new projects, it's almost like, I'll do that in my spare time. I'll take that on as a little bit of a hobby, which is a great shame, really. And I think a lot of football fans, of course, of which I'm one of, they may not necessarily appreciate just how much work these guys have got to do as well. And also these guys have got their own private lives as well. I mean, I don't think I've spoken to many people at Hibs. I wouldn't say all of them, but I haven't spoken to many people at Hibs that aren't Hibs fans themselves. aren't pissed off on a Monday, you know, after a bad result on a Saturday. I know a lot of the guys that I'd been speaking to after the game against Rangers that were sending me messages and stuff, and we were messaging each other. Bearing in mind what the game was, that kicked off at 2:45 or 3:45 here in the morning. So I thought I was going to struggle to stay awake for it, but yeah, Irvin Welsh kept me up and but yeah, and those guys are passionately messaging me throughout the game. Do you know what I mean? And I'm like, and what I thought was really encouraging was that guy's doing his job. He's messaging me about the stuff that he's got to message me about. He's keeping in contact with me for the man of the match, because our consultancy group got to pick the man of the match as well. He was kind of taking pictures of the advertising board, and he was keeping me up to date. But he's also chatting away to me about the game as well, and raging about this bit and this decision and that and blah blah blah. And you're like, these guys are diehard Hibs, so there's no reason why they don't think the same as every other Hibs fan. Do you know what I mean? And it's, yeah, as I said, I just think it's down to staff and having time to allocate the work.
So we'll go into the Rangers game in just a wee minute, but I suppose the last question really about in terms of your work and what you do is how much contact do you have with Hibs specifically? Do you work closely with Hibs, or have you done in the past?
So I'd spoken to Hibs about a couple of players, and that was during COVID, to find cover for these players. So those players going out on loan and stuff like that. Obviously, I couldn't kind of name any particular players' names, but yeah. So I'd spoke to him about that. From a commercial point of view, I've spoken to him about potential shirt deals and sleeve sponsors and stuff like that from businesses in Asia and across the rest of the world trying to come into the club. I also speak to them about team tours, and one of the projects that Hibs are very, very passionate about doing after COVID is getting more people to come into the stadium as tourists for stadium visits and stuff like that, and basically use the space that's there. So, and I'd said to the guys there and said, you know, Edinburgh, people love to go to Edinburgh as a tourist attraction, but you know, how many people are we managing to get? You know, American tourists, Canadian tourists, Japanese tourists and stuff. How many of them are we getting down to the stadium? Get them down to the stadium, get them buying shirts, you know, like brand it along with, I don't know if you could brand it with Edinburgh District Council or tourism and you know, Tourist Scotland and stuff like that. So I've been speaking to them about that, and youth player tours. So again, it's kind of getting teams across the world, youth teams, to go up to East Mains and train at the facility, possibly play against some local competition, because that happens here in Asia all the time, and that happens in the US all the time, and it's something that's relatively new. I would have to say also that I do similar programs for Rangers as well. My wife is a Rangers reporter, and she said, look, if you're going to, perfect in every way apart from one, but when she said, look, if you're going to work with Hibs, then you have to work with Rangers. And you know, see, to be honest with you, the people at Rangers, they're second to none. Honestly, they're incredible. If you want to talk about clubs going overseas and trying to work with clubs, Rangers work with one of the clubs in the Indian Super League, and that's a massive population there, and they've really pulled off a blinder by doing that one, and they're the first club that I've seen to really make ambitions like that. And as much as I'm very proud, like any other Hibs fan, of Hibs being firsts of doing stuff, I'm just kind of a bit upset that it wasn't Hibs that were the first to try and move into that market. But certainly, if they're the second one, then there's enough heads to go around really to be part of that.
Keep plugging away, try and make that deal happen.
It sounds like it's definitely worth it. Like, if there's all that room for growth there, and whenever you got growth, you've got income, and whenever you got income, you can grow the club. You get better players in, you get a bit of success.
And the same, it's very kind of simple stuff. Well, it sounds simple, but it's using your numbers on social media. people kind of look at Twitter and Facebook and they say, but that's just numbers and that's just followers. That doesn't mean anything. And you're like, no, you can monetize those numbers. You just need to know ways to monetize those numbers. So, for example, one of the programs that I do with footballers and football clubs, I say, right, so here's a lot of businesses who want to pay adverts. Here's a lot of players in football clubs that want money. So you are allowed to advertise your product on their platform, and then they'll offer you a certain amount of money to advertise their product in your platform. So if you're a club that's got 100,000 followers, then that's quite attractive to a business. Now, that business might not have a budget of millions, but it has a budget of 10 grand, something like that. So it's going to say, right, so I want you to advertise our product and I want you to repost our product for 2 weeks and we'll give you 2 grand. And they might turn around and say, no, you need to give me more. And they say, oh, all right, there's 3 grand. So you get 3 grand for 2 weeks. Then you could do another project and another project and another project. So it's just steady money coming in. There's always ways to monetize the numbers across social media. Again, kind of coming back to Scottish clubs, that they just don't do that as well as clubs in America and clubs in Asia, and even clubs in Australia that are picking up on that as well. So yeah, chipping away and trying to make more clubs aware of that. And again, it's difficult as well because the whole dynamic continually changes and you need to be on it. And that's why I'm saying that they just don't have the staff to be able to keep on top of these things as well. And I guarantee there'll be about 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 different things that I'm not aware of as well that, you know, that are the hottest thing of this week, and it might change next week. So yeah, keep chipping away.
You definitely see a difference in Hibs since Ron Gordon came in with that kind of thing. Like we seem to be like every other week Hibs are announcing another partner. You know, things for like internet security to shaving your balls, and know that those two things are related, but at least I would hope no. But things like that, like, so I think they're definitely get onto it. So
maybe you've found a gap in the market there.
Aye, maybe
you've just found yourself a gap in the market.
Get them on the webcam, and oh no, right, that's too far. Right, we'll go move on to the Rangers game, which was Wednesday night, 1-0 defeat. Richard, you were sponsors, so you got to pick man of the match. Who did you pick for it?
I picked Deid, Josh Deid.
I
have to say that. Yeah, well, I have to say that it was a 3-way, really. Going back to your shaving your balls and your webcam, it was a 3-way with Cadden and Irvin and Deid. So I was kind of like, I thought Deid took it, and then when they subbed him off, I was like, but I still think that. Do you know, if Irvin hadn't had that miss, I might have swung towards him a bit more. But I thought Deid really had deserved to get the man of the match, so kind of gave it to him. And it's funny because, you know, when you talk about people criticising football clubs, and, you know, and Hibs fans criticise, and Hibs fans are no different from any other fans. We think that we moan more than everybody else. We don't. We just moan the same. We just see more about our moaning. But when Hibs posted about him being man of the match, there was people on Twitter and Facebook going, what are you saying? There's no way he was man of the match. Irvin should have been man of the match, or Cadden should have been man of the match. But then you had the majority of people saying, no, Deid deserved to be man of the match. But it was like people were just dying to just jump on something right away. And I was quite conscious going, oh shit, it was me that picked man of the match. And I was like, I hope everyone's going to start saying that it was Deid, because unless I know absolutely nothing about the game that I'm watching, for me he was a standout there. And I kind of felt myself saying to Hibs fans that were friends that messaged me, I'd say, look, I quite like Jackson Irvin, and Cadden was up there, but Deid for me just kind of pipped it towards the end. So sticking with him, still saying it was the right choice.
It's strange.
It was actually Darren McGregor, but we'll no go there.
It's strange that you had to justify that. I mean, you paid for the privilege of saying whoever it was that you wanted it to be.
Yeah. I should have said my dad. He never got off the bench.
John, what did you think of the game? How do you think we did?
I thought we did all right. It was a wee bit like the game at Ibrox, I thought, in as much as they got the goal after we'd had a couple of chances, and it just sort of fizzled out a wee bit after that. There wasn't really, like, I don't think Rangers had to try too hard. Hibs couldn't really get back in it. I don't know whether I don't remember many chances in the second half for Hibs, but obviously Richard mentioned there the chance for Irvine, and I think we maybe had two others around about the same time. So I mean, I think we gave a good account of ourselves, especially after the semi-final defeat, that kind of thing. Like, I think Chris Cadden put in a game that justified why Hibs had signed him, because we hadn't really seen that against St Johnstone.
What about biggest talking point in the game? So two main ones that stick out. Morelos, we're happy he should have been sent off.
Aye,
it absolutely should have been sent off. Absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. And kind of the more you watch it, the more you just get annoyed, because you're looking at the referee looking straight at it. You're looking at the linesman looking straight at it, and it just gets more and more annoying the more you look at it. If I had one criticism other than a criticism of the referee, I would say that the players, not that you're going to change the referee's mind anyway, but they didn't seem to be as enough. And I mean, I think Hallberg and McGregor were the two first over to him, and I was kind of like, I mean, being a hothead though, I'd be losing my mind. I mean, I'd be getting sent off every day, but it was just, I just didn't feel that they shouted for it enough.
Well, we talked about this
Not that that would change it.
When we were looking at reviewing the semi-final defeat, we were talking about leadership, mind you. And one of the things we said, what do you mean by leadership? And it wasn't just like who shouts loudest, but it was moments like that in a game where you go, we're not having that. Like, and probably if you'd taken us back to the 2016 vintage Hibs, you would have had Gray steaming in there, McGinn getting in amongst it, Fontaine, McGregor, like you said, like he was kind of there as well. But you would have had enough players there making a big noise about it to make sure the referee's got a decision to make about what's just happened there, and also kind of putting in like letting Morelos know they can't just get away with it.
I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. The one thing I'm kind of thinking about, I'd like to watch it back, is how many of the other players, like how many of the other like 8 players, say that weren't involved in an instance. So you mentioned Hallberg there, you mentioned McGregor there, and obviously Porteous is on the deck. How many of those players actually saw it? And additionally, because the referee has had a clear view of it, and the linesman as well. I mean, obviously we've seen the picture. The referee, the main guy, he's had a clear view of it, and he's decided, well, I'm not going to do anything about that. The danger I think that Hibs fall into in that circumstance is when you get the bodies crowding around the referee, and call me a cynic here, is that the Hibs players end up getting booked for one of their players ended up on the deck. And I thought that Hibs would sort of take matters into their own hand. I mean, you've got Darren McGregor there. He's no shrinking violet. I'm sure he's more than capable and more than well. In fact, he did it, if you remember, back against the big ponytailed Greek fella that played for Tripolice.
Asteris. Tripolice Asteris.
Aye. So I think, I can't remember what the boy had done, but I think he'd left a leg on a few challenges. So McGregor just absolutely levelled him, and I expected that's what would happen at some point throughout the rest of the Rangers game. And I think
we were all waiting for it. Waiting for it.
Just never really got the opportunity. I mean, he's bundled. McGregor's bundled over. I can't remember the boy's name, but he's bundled him over on the touchline, and that seemed to be about the size of it. That seemed to be about all the retribution that there was. The frustrating thing about the Morelos incident, I think I'm right in saying that it wasn't the first time that he's done something like that hasn't been penalised at the time, and retrospective action's been taken, and obviously he's got the goal. So the retrospective action means absolutely he hot at Hibs.
Aye.
Yeah, I mean, he's been given a 3-match ban now because of it, and exactly the same as you guys. The first thought that I had in my mind was, how does that benefit Hibs? All that's going to do is it means that he's not playing against teams that could potentially catch us up or take points off of us. Whereas it was 15 minutes into the game when that happened. That changes the whole dynamic of the match. And to give him, and see when people turn around to you and say, but it's all swings and roundabouts and it comes round. We're Hibs. No, it doesn't.
It never does.
It doesn't come round. It doesn't. It comes round when you're Barcelona or Real Madrid. It doesn't come round when you're Hibs, and you just.
Funnily enough,
Yeah.
during the game, they mentioned something I'm sure I've talked about in the podcast before. It was when Chris Killen got sent off at Easter Road. It was a way back, sort of like 2007, 2008-ish. And that was after he'd been assaulted twice on the pitch by, I think it was Julian Rodriguez both times. Killen reacted, he got sent off. And you're like, well, like you say, like it just, these things in those games never ever seem to even out. The only exception I'd say to that is when Rob Jones booted Philip Sebo up and down the Easter Road pitch. That was a beautiful day to behold. That was, I don't know if you remember, I think that might have been the same game where the referee, whoever it was, insisted that Alan McGregor moved the ball back about 3-4 times to take the ball, to take the free kick for where the infringement took place. And McGregor hasn't changed in the intervening years. Like, he's still a tone-faced bastard.
Right.
Well, was that the same game when McGregor came right out his goals, and what game was that when McGregor came running out and nearly clotheslined the boy on the D? Was that the same game?
So are you talking about the kick in the back on McNulty?
No.
You talking about
I think it was a different game. I can't remember. I remember the incident. I can't remember what game it was.
The point is, there's more than one, and if you go back to the Rangers game there on Wednesday, him shouting and howling at the referee when he's had his hand on the ball and stuff, and potentially could have been the penalty and yada 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 yada. He's shouting and bawling at the referee, and I know guys that are referees that are SFA referees, and they're all to a man. They'd be like, I'd tell that guy, where to get off, for
it's a yellow card
with us. And I'm sure you're going to get to the point as well about should Christian Deid have gone down because he was being honest by trying to stay on his feet, and I'm kind of like it's connected with what we're saying here as well, because I'm like, had he gone down, I don't think we'd have got anything.
Nah.
And we'd all be sitting here just now going, he should have stayed on his feet because the opportunity was there to get a goal. So damned if you do and damned if you don't.
Aye, you're spot on. I think we would have got a penalty for it. We also had Hallberg going for the header at the near post where the boy gives him a two-handed shove in the back. And this one split opinion when we put it on Twitter. Some people thought Stonewall penalty. A few folks thought, he was just diving for the header. But if you look at how he dives for the header, he goes the sort of direction that's not quite in the same direction as where the ball's going. And it's because he shoved. Yeah. For me, I was screaming for it. I thought it was definitely a penalty.
Do you know, it's funny you say that, because when I saw it, I jumped off the couch. So you've got to bear in mind, it's 3 o'clock, 3:30 or something in the morning here in Vietnam, right? My wife's Rangers fan sitting on one end of the couch. I'm sitting at the other end of the couch. We've kind of got a barrier of pillows and cushions and stuff.
Home end and away end.
In case we launch at each other. And when the push came in, I shouted, penalty. And then nothing happened. So I just thought, and it's funny thing, I'm like, I thought to myself, I must have imagined that, because everything just carried on. Nobody said anything. There was no mention of it. There wasn't much. And it was just like, by the time I'd stopped shouting penalty, the game had carried on and there was no real action replays of it or anything. And I was like, I must have just imagined that.
I was the same.
Weren't asked about either.
I read some of the tweets after the game talking about, obviously, the Morelos incident, and it mentioned the penalty incident. I was thinking back, what penalty? Because I remember, I think, was it a ball in for Dougie Tripod, and Hallberg's tried to get the flick on it in the middle. It never looked to me like a penalty at the time, and like you say, the game just carried on. There was no protest for the Hibs players. There was no protest for Hallberg in particular. But when you watch it, like the arms are definitely out.
Hallberg looks like he'd watch you steal his car and no protest about it. Do you know what I mean? He just looks like, I'm not giving a fuck about anything. Like, you could pretty much get away with anything. He'd be like, meh, doesn't matter.
Yeah, just the politest Scandinavian you'd ever met. I mean, like, get him in a room with a Canadian and they'll just have a friendly off and see who can do next.
No, after you. No, I insist.
Right, we beat Dundee United on Saturday. John, what was your take on that game? What stood out for you?
Getting the result. I know that sounds really really simplistic. Sorry, I know that sounds like a really simplistic point of view, but I don't think the Tannadice is the easiest place to go at the best of times. They've just come up this season. I think quite a few podcasts back we were talking about Hibs being held at home, and then there was a bit of chat about how Dundee United had held Aberdeen at home, because quite a few times this season people have pointed to the fact that Aberdeen have got the result quite a few people have pointed to the fact that Hibs haven't gotten a result and said that's why Aberdeen will finish third.
Yeah.
But I was looking at the stats just before we came on, and Dundee United had something like 62% of possession. I'm thinking, Christ, like I don't remember them being that dominant. But Hibs, completely differently from the games that have really, really frustrated us. We took our chances. I think there was only really, correct me if I'm wrong, the two clear chances that we had, one from McGregor and the one where Boyle's been played through. So we got it right.
I was going to say, kind of at the statistics thing, though, I'd kind of looked at that, but then I'd also kind of thought of it in a different way, because the way that I'd seen with Dundee United having so much of the possession, that was probably, and this is just my take on it, but for me it was that every time they got the ball, they were running the ball through the middle, and they would run at pace with the ball and try and push Hibs back and try and press Hibs back. As a result, they didn't do it. It sounds schoolboyish, but it wasn't. But it seemed that they didn't really go for passing the ball as much. They went for running with the ball more. Whereas Hibs are getting the ball and they're trying to do quick, crisp passes and play the ball around. So statistically, you start looking at the statistics and going, well, Dundee United had the ball more, and you're like, well, were Hibs not doing more passing though at the same time? And it's two different styles of play. Do you know what I mean? So yeah. I think the expression is that that statistics are what a lamppost is to a drunk man, there to lean on and not for illumination. And I think that's one of those kind of situations when you look at the stats going, that's not the game I watched, but it depends on how you're getting those stats and how you're coming to those conclusions.
And if you look at the starting lineup, the big talking point before the game was no Nisbet and no Porteous, who both were subject to kind of transfer speculation before it. We didn't seem to miss them too much, Richard. What do you think?
Do you know? Well, do you know when I saw the starting lineup, I thought to myself, is this like a dry run? Is this a dress rehearsal of what life would be like without having these guys in the team? So I was willing to give it the benefit of the doubt and just see what it was like. I think at the same time though, I was probably the same as every other Hibs fan when it came to this, whereas I looked at it and says, so it's Dundee United. They've just been hammered by St Mirren. They're struggling for points, and I mean, to be fair, they're doing not too bad. But I've got a few Dundee United mates that that really wish they were doing a lot better. And I thought, and here's Hibs, and I'm trying to be more positive in my older years as I get on. But there's that old kind of Hibs thing in the back of my head going, and the Hibs circus rolls into town. If there's a team that needs
well, I've been there.
Here comes Hibs. So I was hoping for the best, and I thought it could go one of two ways. We're either going to get a win and look comfortable, or we're going to get humped and it's just going to continue on and just be depressing. So I'm glad, obviously, that we got the win. And I was actually, I was probably happier that the Boiler managed to get himself a goal as well. And I'm liking that partnership with Jackson Irvine and Boyle as well. And it's just good to see Boyle getting a goal. Nisbet, I'm sure we're going to talk about. Porteous, I'm not a massive fan of anyway. I think there's a decent player in there. And obviously Stevie Clark, has put him in the Scotland team, so, he knows more than me. So there's definitely something there. I'm just, again, trying not to be the negative one, but I'm like, there probably is something there, but we'll not see the best of it because he'll have moved on to another club by the time you see the best coming out the player. So, the same as Hibs fans are very loyal to the guys that won us the Scottish Cup. There's kind of being over loyal to players. Hanlon, again, I'm not a massive fan of at all. Hanlon for me was supposed to be a player that was going to be great, and I think he's levelled out now and he's not going to go anywhere past that. He can have a great game, but I think he has more bad games than he has great games. But then you look at him and go, but he scored against Hearts in the quarterfinals. And you're like, well, I can't complain about that. Do you know what I mean? But again, that's just take the green glasses off and kind of look at it subjectively in a bigger picture. And I'm like, Porteous, not a massive loss if we can find someone to replace him. And football fans, again, like I said, we're fickle anyway. We'll find someone else. A new boy will come through from the academy. He'll replace him, and he'll be the best thing since sliced bread. And we'll be like, who's Porteous? We've forgotten who he is already.
Aye, well, I think we were lucky. So Harlan came back into the team. I thought Harlan done all right on Saturday, to be fair. But the re-emergence of Darren McGregor, it's just a shame we couldn't roll the years back on him. You know, take him to a decade ago and have that time on him again, because he's had 2 great performances, but you wonder how long he can keep pulling out performances like that.
Yeah.
Forever.
It's funny.
Forever.
It's funny you say that because he's getting all the plaudits, and rightfully so. And then I've got the voice in my head going, Darren McGregor, he is a class defender. And then you've got the different voice in your head going, never gives the ball away. And I'm like, aye, but he does, but...
So. They all do. We mentioned Cadden for the Rangers game. I thought Cadden on Saturday was immense. The first half especially, I mean, he got booted up and down the park, and how the referee didn't get a yellow card out. You know, before, I think McGregor was actually the first player booked in 70-odd minutes, but Cadden took some punishment. He took the punishment that Martin Boyle normally takes.
Yep.
And then it was interesting, John, I'll get your thoughts on this. Cadden playing on the right side and Boyle playing more central and up front. Do you think that's something we're going to see going forward?
I don't know, is my honest answer.
Right, well, I'm really maybe Mystic Meg. What do you think?
What do I think? I can never. You didn't give me the opportunity to give you just a detailed answer. It's like, right, I want hard facts, yes or no.
Come on, folk are listening.
And when you're done with that, I want the lottery numbers.
I'm not a fan of Boyle playing through the middle or playing as a striker. I think he's strongest outright, but Cadden was better on Saturday. So I just don't know. Like, it's good to have those options. It's good to have that variation. I quite like when Boyle cuts into the middle from the wing, because you've got a lot of pace there, and obviously it helps spread the play. But I think that Cadden's as tricky as Boyle, probably not. But then that's having Cadden there taking that punishment that's normally been reserved for Boyle this season. It's quite a good thing to have. Like, it reminds me, I don't know if you remember the story. It was for Hibs back in I want to say it was like back in the 50s, and they were going to play Torino or something.
I'm not that old.
No, I obviously read it in a book. I'm not that old either. But I think it was Joe Baker. He was obviously getting. Was it Joe Baker? Someone was getting a lot of plaudits at the time for scoring a lot of goals. And what Hibs done before going to Italy was change the shirts. So the person was like number 9. Aye. So they booted whoever it was up and down the pitch, and of course Joe Baker went and scored quite a few. So, I suppose it's pretty good in that respect. And he's, to be fair, he took that punishment and he continued to plug away, and he continued to get really good quality deliveries in. The only complaint I'd perhaps have with that is that it seemed to be that we just continued to do that for about 40 minutes and just let him get the shit kicked to him for that entire time, rather than try and vary the play a bit more.
He was really direct. That's why I think there was one run he went on. I think he kind of took on 3 men. I think before he was eventually fouled, they got a cross in right down the touchline. He just like head down, on you go. I like to see that with players. I'm a big fan of old-fashioned wingers. So when you see a player just getting their head down and taking players on, kind
of like a Ulysses de la Cruz.
Aye.
Wanting a Ulysses de la Cruz kind of guy, head down and straight, just off you go, catch me if you can.
Pinging them into the top corner after 20 seconds. Aye.
Which I missed. I was waiting for a mate outside the East Terrace. I heard the roar go up, raging because, I managed to get to the top of the steps going into the East Terrace. And it was like, what's the score? It's 1-0. Brilliant, excellent. And that game finished. Did it finish 1-0?
2-0.
No, finished 2-0.
2-0. Aye, De La Cruz got the other one as well.
Yeah. I just remember thinking, everyone's enjoying a goal. I haven't seen a goal. This is awful. And it was my mate's first game. That's what you get for trying to do a good thing and rope a mate in and trying to get him to come to the game, and then it ends up late and I missed the goal. But who thought you were going to get a goal that quickly anyway, right?
And at least you're not still holding it against them. So we had Cadden was a real plus point, and then also Jackson Irvine got that the right way around, haven't I?
Yep.
Yeah, you've said it 3 or 4 times, and I'm glad you did, Richard, because I get that wrong all the time. Jackson Irvine. He was immense. Jackson. Yeah, so 2 assists. His first assist, probably underrated, because it looked quite simple. But
you'll just be glad that Jack Ross isn't playing for Rangers today then.
Aye. Just didn't even...
I was listening back to the last podcast the other day there, and you were talking about Jack Ross playing the ball into the Rangers player, and I was thinking, did you say Jack Ross? And it was funny. I can't remember if it was John or if it was Craig that was talking about the ball went out for a throw in and Jack Ross gave it back to him. And I was genuinely thinking, did the ball go out and Jack Ross kicked it to him for a quick throw in or something? I must have missed that. But yeah, sorry, I'm going off on tangent.
That's all right. I'm trying to remember that bit of the conversation, but I can't. So Jack Irvine, the first Hibs goal, he kind of wins the knockdown from the corner. I can't remember. The keeper's made a save. Can't remember how it comes to him anyway. The ball, picks up the ball with the touchline, holds off the defender, rolls it back to McGregor. Was it?
It was a shot. Was it a header that came in and it was a save and then it got knocked out to the side and then played back in from Jackson and then laid out to McGregor who I was watching a hang with him today. He says, I just closed my eyes and hit it as hard as I could.
Yes.
So I love the honesty.
And he definitely, you can see if you watch him when you watch the replay, after he strikes the ball, he's actually kind of one of those ones where you hit it so hard that both feet come off the ground.
Yep.
He's elevated himself with lashing it into the net. Didn't expect McGregor to score a goal like that, do you?
I don't know. He scored that.
A goal like that either. I didn't expect Goggins to get a goal like that a couple of weeks previously. So
you'd imagine that McGregor, if he was going to score, it would be with Header, but he did score that goal against Raith Rovers, I think, in our Scottish Cup run in the replay. And I think he described it the same. He just got the laces through it.
We just after Hibs had won the cup, we had a tour of the training centre with Hibs.net, and when we got there, they had the Scottish Cup. They also had McGregor, Hanlon, and David Gray, and to do like a wee talk us through the run of the games. So they had a monitor out, and they put the games, and McGregor was sitting next to me and Josh, and he just turned around and was talking to Josh all the way through. Kind of as we go to each game, he's doing like a wee running commentary for, this is what we thought before the game, this is what we targeted, but that's exactly what he said for that one. He says, I was just trying it, I was going to miss, just shut my eyes, head down, hit it as hard as I could. It was a good goal. Second goal that Jackson Irvine is involved with. So we've got McGuinness wins the ball back on the touchline, knocks it into Irvine, who rides a tackle. Would have been very easy for him to go down at that point, but he's obviously seen that he's in space if he can stay on his feet. And then the pass was sort of Scott Allen-esque, wasn't it? Right through to Boyle.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen it. No, let me finish. Fucking hell. The Australian soccer Twitter account had tweeted an almost identical set of circumstances where Irvine's collected the ball. I think he's rode the challenge and he's played the ball through, and Australia have scored from it. And it's put it up side by side alongside the commentary, Martin Boyle's goal as well. But it's brilliant. See, thinking back to it, like I actually thought that, like I know Scottish football isn't the most glamorous at the best of times, and the pitches now are a bit stinking. But when you were talking about Cadden before, like just getting the heat down, and I was thinking, I don't have an image of this. I can just imagine that he must have come off the pitch afterwards, and his shirt and his shorts and his socks must have just been absolutely covered in mud.
Aye.
But the same, so Irvine set up that goal, the first one, and he's obviously got presence of mind there to kind of lift the head up and see who's about, and he's laid it off to McGregor. And then the second goal, like you say, he's kind of rode the challenge. It's quite athletic, quite graceful, and then he's played that lovely through ball, and Boyle done what Boyle doesn't normally do. Normally he just kind of hits it at the keeper's legs, and he's managed to just sort of clip it over Seacrest, who completely snookered us at Easter Road. He had game of his life, and
Yeah.
he looked like a completely ordinary keeper at the weekend there.
Yeah.
So with Boyle's
And I
finish, Richard,
and-
from a coaching point of view, you happy with that?
Well, I was just actually going to say from a commercial point of view, and sorry to be the boring one here, but a perfect example of what we're saying there now is that the Australian soccer Twitter feed, whatever, is talking about Hibs, and you're like, who's now following this up in Australia? Who's because there are a lot of Hibbies in Australia,
Yeah.
and there are a lot more people that would be interested. Football's the biggest growing sport. Soccer, football is the biggest growing sport in Australia just now. And there's a lot of passionate people there, and there's a lot of passionate people that are maybe not necessarily wanting to follow the biggest clubs, and particularly if you've got guys that play in the Australian national team. What more reason do we need for Hibs to kind of try and get a few more of these fans in and sell a few shirts? And it's not just selling the shirts, it's getting a bit of TV revenue and stuff like that. And wee bit of TV revenue means you get more advertising means you get more sponsor means you get more money, and then ultimately it all sibs down to paying bigger wages and buying more players.
Better players, yeah.
Yeah.
2 penalty shouts, John. I'll get your opinion on the first one. Martin Boyle tripped to the edge of the box. You having that as a penalty, or did you think it would have been soft?
I honestly don't remember it.
Brilliant. There's a cutting edge analysis. We're almost hitting the heights of sports scene here. Richard, do you remember the incident?
It was a penalty. He runs across the kind of back of him and clips him, and it's a penalty. With VAR, it would be a penalty. My wife comes out with one name, and she says that it's an egg. When it comes to a situation like that, she goes, it's an egg. Hard or soft, it's still an egg. It doesn't matter. It's always an egg. And I would say the same for the second one as well. It's a handball. It's a penalty. So
the second one's no penalty.
It's a penalty. It's
because I had this argument on Thursday when we did Quick Bang. No, on Saturday after the game, we were talking about it, and the rule is specifically for defending. And specifically in the instance of whether or not a penalty is awarded, is if the ball comes onto the hand or the arm immediately after hitting another body part, it's not no penalty is awarded. So it hits Deid, hits his side and then onto his arm. So
I stand corrected there then, because I thought it came off the ground and bounced up, and he moves his arm.
That would have been a penalty. That would have been, but because it hits his side first and then onto his arm.
You're feeling right smart, Matty, aren't you? Because you know the rule book.
I was getting slaughtered on Twitter, and the folk quoting me going, "Look at this fanny and everything."
Hang on, rule 18.4 states.
I know I'm right. But for once, it was a full moon, and I got something right.
Do you know if you watch it on YouTube, the best bit about that penalty, or whether it was a penalty or whether it's not, is being able to hear the Dundee United coaching staff on the sideline.
Oh, they went mental.
You're fucking joking me, ref. And it's like, this kind of off topic, but do you remember when you used to watch football things and they used to apologise for some of the language you're going to hear? I think they've just given up for these games with no fans in the ground. And I'm also like, so if you hear fans swearing in the ground, the commentator apologises.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's the coaching staff, they're just like, nah, fuck it.
It was Micky Mellon, which is a good name, by the way. But he was getting. I used to work beside somebody whose mum was called Helen Mellon. That's true. I didn't know it was her mum at the time. I saw the name and laughed at it, and she went, "Oh, that's my mum." Oh, well, mum's got a good name. He said after the game, he's like, "Well, what is the rule? Do you know, we need to be told what the rule is." And I'm sitting there going, "Let me tell him what the rule is," because he's fucking wrong.
So the manager of a football team is asking to be told prior to the game what the rule is?
After the game, when the penalty wasn't given, he's like, "I don't think we even know the rule. What is the rule?"
Aye, fair dues.
Aye, we'll explain it to you.
Is that one of those rules that's changed, like kickoffs, for example, that only need to be taken? Is it just been snuck in there quietly?
So I can't remember if it started this season or the start of last season where they amended it, because the handball rule has changed a wee bit recently. So even I think this season they changed it. If it's the attacking player that handles it, you know, when they were checking with VAR, there was loads of instances in England where if there'd been a handball of any sort, deliberate or not, by an attacking player in the run up to a goal, the goal was disallowed. So I think there was a Spurs player, it was a shocker who got fouled. So as he's fouled and he's fallen, their player, like the defender, kicks the ball off his arm and it bounces off him, falls to the other striker who scores, and the goal gets disallowed for handball because the law was literally any handball in the run up it gets disallowed. And then they changed it this year to it has to be immediately before the goal, so pretty much the striker handling it himself and then scoring for it to count as a handball.
What I want to know, though, as forever the pessimist, what I want to know is, did the referee see it anyway? Did the referee say, oh, that's not a penalty because it hit this part and then hit this part?
Well,
or did the referee say no penalty because he never saw it anyway?
The linesman's had a great view of it. So I'm taking the linesman seen it and been able to tell the referee, no penalty. That's what, because I don't know how the referee could have seen it, because I think Shankland's is in the way as he's challenging for the ball. So I'm giving the linesman the credit for getting it right.
Are you checking to see whether you're related to the linesman or not, Matty?
No. No relation.
Well, do you know, at the same time though, when I think back to listening to the dogs abuse for the Dundee United coaching staff, it was all Lino. So it was a linesman that was getting it tight. So I'm in your camp there, Matty, definitely, because it was a linesman that was getting yeah.
John,
after he's listened to this. Aye. After he's listened to this and he's heard your breakdown of the rules, he'll be delighted with himself.
John, I think we both tweeted about Micky Mellon at the same time, just about his white socks and cat dyes. That was a throwback, wasn't it?
It was my adopted dad. He was saying that Micky Mellon has a big person's face but a small person's body. He's an interesting looking character. I don't know much about him. You know how some referees, some managers, you know them from their playing days or you recognise them. You've heard the name before. I'd never heard of Micky Mellon before until he'd taken up the reins at Dundee United.
Well, he was at Tranmere, but I don't know. I'm the same as you. I don't know anything about him. I know that he came from Tranmere, and I don't think he had much of a career in Scottish football, if at all. Could be wrong, but. Yeah.
I was going to say that the thing, so I do a lot of work with Tranmere Rovers, so I know a lot of the guys down there, and I'm kind of quite. I keep an eye on a lot of what the fans are saying at Tranmere as well, and I thought just to kind of address the balance after me kind of battering Scottish football a little bit, so kind of just to address the balance on that, when Mellon left Tranmere to go to Dundee United, there was a lot of Tranmere fans that were gutted that he left, first of all. And second of all, they were saying, look, he's a good manager and he's gone to a better club at a bigger league. And, so there wasn't any of this snobbery of, oh, you want to stay down in England. These were Tranmere fans going, Dundee United's a massive club and he's gone to a better job in a better club and that's playing in a better league. So it was quite nice to see that the Tranmere fans instead of this normal arrogance. But it was also good to see the Scottish game being talked up rather than talked down as well.
Which is in stark contrast to some of the Birmingham fans from today and yesterday who've been kind of tweeting loads of Hibs content about Kevin Nisbet going and slating Hibs football
got to be loving
Scottish football.
McGinn's got to be loving that. John McGinn will be loving that. Right?
McGinn's leaving the steal of the century. Right, so quickly, just before we finish up the transfer talk, so as things stand, unless anything's changed while we've been recording this, both Nisbet and Porteous have stayed at Hibs, Mallon's gone to Turkey, and Gullen's gone to Wraith Rovers. Which is a more frightening prospect, going to Turkey or going to Kirkcaldy?
Well, I've been to Kirkcaldy, and that remains the scariest place I've been.
I was thinking the Turkish barber is going to make an absolute fortune off of Mellon with his eyebrows and that amount of grooming that's going on there. They'll all be rubbing their hands. This is like happy days for them.
I just have to say, while you're getting the boot into Kirkcaldy as well, there's many good people there in the Kingdom of Kings, but being out in Vietnam, sometimes you miss new banter and new phrases, and I saw Wraith Rovers getting spoke about on an internet forum, and I'd never heard this term being used. because they kept on referring to this team, the Kirkcaldy shit kickers. And I was like, what team are they talking about? You know, it's just one of those ones that been away and you miss the banter and like, so it took me a good 5 minutes. Kirkcaldy shit kickers are Wraith Rovers. That's who they are. But I can't mind if it was Cowdenbeath fans that kept referring to them as the Kirkcaldy shit kickers. But that's brilliant.
Cowdenbeath fans have got a brass neck slagging anybody, to be fair. If you ever go to Cowdenbeath, it's like the fucking Wild West. I say this as somebody who lives in Fife. I need to be careful with it in case they track me down. But
you'll be a man in Tesco.
Cowdenbeath is the dump of dumps.
I do remember that's again kind of going off tangent, so I apologise already. But that's one of and apologies to any Cowdenbeath fans as well that hear this. But I think that still has to be my. You know, before we went on there to start the podcast, we're talking about football chants and banter and stuff in the stands. I think that's got to be the best one that I ever heard was the fans singing, "They're filthy and they're smelly. They come from near Lochgelly. They haven't got a telly. The Cowden family." It's like that is without a doubt the best slagging in a football song.
That still gets sung.
Was that something? Was it the Kirkcaldy shit kickers, or was it that song that was like printed in a local newspaper or something that caused a wee bit of a? Well, it caused the local rivalry to boil over a wee bit.
Well, the rivalries here. The rivalries in Fife are proper. Like Dunfermline and Wraith have a big rivalry, and you know, Sammy the Tammy, the Dunfermline mascot. So they got into bother because they had the Wraith fans come. Wraith were at Dunfermline's East End Park, and Sammy the Tammy's come out with a tank. Do you know, like a kind of, fuck knows what it made out of, like cardboard boxes. Aye, like a military tank that he's come out around his waist, and he's walked up to the away fans and he's pretending to fucking shoot them all and absolutely loving it, eh? And they were all going mental about it. Sure, it was a Dunfermline mascot that did that. I've got a wee soft spot for Wraith. They're one of my pals that work besides a proper diehard Wraith fan. And you know, when and this sounds like a patronising, I didn't mean it to be patronising, but I always respect fans at teams like Wraith Rovers that are proper fans. They're as much a fan of Wraith as we are of Hibs, and there's no glory in it, really. Yeah. Although they've had a League Cup and a Petrofat Cup recently where they beat Rangers, which was quite good. So always a wee soft spot for Wraith.
I like. I was going to say at Starks Park. I like the boozer. My apologies to the Wraith fans. I don't remember the name of the bar, but right behind the bar, it's got the picture of Wraith Rovers going to go up against Bayern Munich. You know, and it's a big, huge picture printed on the wall. And I just remember going in there exactly the same as what you're saying, Matty. I was like, spot on, proper fans, brilliant fans, and if if your team went 1-0 up against Bayern Munich, you'd have that blown up on the wall behind the bar as well. Do you know what I mean? There was that fair play, excellent, looks brilliant as well.
Aye, it's superb. I mean, I get exactly the picture you're talking about as well. My favourite thing we go into Stars Park is the last time it was there, the ball went out over the stand. And if you know Stars Park, there's a wee road that runs down and there's houses along the side of it, and the ball had bounced onto somebody's door. And the person came to see who was at the door. Lovely Higsley, right?
As much as I had a wee pop at Kirkcaldy there, like I do love stadiums like Starks Park, just kind of same with Easter Road, kind of like heart of the community kind of thing, like in amongst the houses.
Aye. Right, transfers. So Nisbet and Porteous at the moment look like they're staying. Gulling away. Dishes getting rattled in the house, and if you can hear that, that's Josh getting himself a pancake or something. Thanks for that, Josh. The team, are we happy with how we're shaped up now, or would you like to see anybody come in before midnight?
So, I'm sorry, I'm just going to jump in here and say that. So, first of all, I don't want him to come to Hibs. But did you see that Canberry's supposed to be going to Aberdeen?
Aye.
And that would be a third striker that they've signed. And I think it's no hidden secret that we should be looking at some strikers. So for me, yes, we should be looking at strikers. Is it Canberry? Absolutely 100% no. But interesting that Canberry's going to go to Aberdeen. But yes, we need some strikers in.
Canberry seems to be on a mission to make himself one of the most hated players in Scottish football, to go from Hibs to Rangers to Aberdeen. I can only imagine that his next move will be Dundee United.
No, I need to go to Celtic.
Celtic.
Actually, what I need to do is sign for Celtic tonight. Have it led Aberdeen up like a true Mo Johnson style.
Aye, that would be funny.
Lead
That would
Aberdeen
be
up
really
the
funny.
Garden path and then rock up. I'd put on Twitter, kind of Canberra saying, I've always wanted to play for, checks notes, Aberdeen. I think we desperately need a striker in, especially with Gullen going out.
But I
Desperately
don't
short
really
at that.
understand. I don't understand that one, but I'm going to bow down to the greater knowledge at the club. But I don't see why you should get rid of put a striker out when we need to be bringing strikers in. We also need a centre back as well.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's a bit odd.
I
I don't know that much Easter Road has changed with Gullen and Mellon going out on loan because they've not really been playing recently. All it really does is kind of deplete the squad depth a wee bit further. And like you're saying, we could probably do with another striker, another centre half.
Well, we've only got
I mean,
this
fair
bit
dues,
of
it's going to
Deid.
free up wages, but I'm saying it's probably going to free up wages.
Yeah.
But I can't see them on any large amount of wages. It's going to make that significant a difference.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see what happens. A couple hours to go anyway. Because I think it's midnight here and 11 o'clock in England.
Oh, I thought it was 11 o'clock here.
Could be that way around as well, John. To be fair,
I don't know.
we're not known for being factually correct.
I only Googled it this morning, so I really don't know.
Fair dues. St Mirren tomorrow night, very quickly, in predictions.
Hibs won.
What makes you say that? Blind optimism, or you got thinking behind it?
I think Hibs have got the beating of St Mirren. Just simple as that. I think, have we beaten them twice already this year?
Yeah,
Or this season?
6, yeah.
So, aye, why not add another 3 to the tally?
Richard?
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to go for a win. We're St Mirren colours here, but I'd have to say a win, and I reckon probably a 2-1. It's not going to be a walk in the park, but here's hoping I'm completely wrong. Here's hoping I have not got a clue what I'm talking about, and we bang in 5 goals, and Nisbet gets a hat trick, and yeah.
Well, St Mirren, they're just on the back of a 5-1 win at Tannadice and then a 2-1 win at Parkhead. And they're hopefully a kind of club like Hibs where they go and pull out 2 brilliant results like that and then go into the next game thinking they're going to walk it and come a cropper. So I'll predict the Hibs win as well.
The thing, sorry, I was going to say about Nisbet as well, I'm not entirely sure if it's factually correct, but I saw it just kind of briefly come up that Nisbet's put in a transfer request.
He did, yeah.
I don't know if...
Well, it was reported that he did.
Aye, I've got my reservations about them. I've got no faith in the Sun or the Daily Record reporting anything factual. So Kevin Nisbet's probably sat at home with his feet up watching. What is it? Is it
Transfer deadline in Sky Sports?
Aye, maybe. I was trying to think of something clever there, but transfer deadline day would have been better.
What were you going to say?
Well, my wife's been watching this thing called, I want to say it's called Married at First Sight or something. It's absolute torture, but she loves it.
Maybe he's watching that then. No, your wife, I hope.
No, well, she is it. She says she's at work.
Well, and obviously you're he and you would be her type, given what you both look like. So
Absolutely.
Right, well there we go. We'll uncover the scandal. Last thing to do in the podcast. I think he did. It was reported to put in the transfer request, and it's an interesting one if he doesn't get sold, because it leaves everybody a wee bit kind of an awkward position. But he did the same at Dunfermline last January when Hibs went in for him, and he asked to move and didn't move, and then he kept banging in the goals to the summer. So hopefully he's of the same similar mindset and just keeps plodding away.
I think if there is any truth in it, I would like to hope that he's the professional that I hope that everyone hopes that he is, and I hope that he then kind of continues to knuckle down and push on, because he's not been scoring as much as he would like to be scoring, and he's still scoring a lot, but I think even himself, he'd think he could be scoring more, and I genuinely believe that he'll go for more money into a better club if he knuckles down between now and the end of the season. And we've got him for what, another
3.5 years?
Not that 3.5 years. Not that contracts really mean anything that much these days anyway. But yeah, it's just going to add more value to him as well. And I'd like to hope that he's a professional, and there's no reason to doubt that he's not, right? Especially from what he did at Dunfermline. So
Based on his career trajectory so far, from him having to drop down the leagues and work his way back up, then I don't think we've got too many concerns about that. It doesn't strike me as... It would strike me as very, very... It would almost be... I wouldn't call it career suicide, but it'd be bizarre if he was to suddenly, down tools now. It wouldn't make any sense based on the work that he's done.
Aye. Well, hopefully he gets a good end to the season and gets himself into the Scotland squad, plays at the Euros, and then we can properly cash in if he's still desperate to go. And it's good for Hibs to not back the bids as well. That's kind of changed days as well. You're looking at £3 million. You don't have to go too far back when that bid would have seen a player off ski quicker than you could have finished the sentence.
Aye.
Yeah, that's something that just generally really annoys me. That, don't get me wrong, obviously there's not that much money as you go down the leagues in England, but certainly the Premiership and the Championship, there's money there, and you just think to yourself, it really should be done days of being able to come to Scotland and take these players away. When you see these paltry sums getting offered for players, you think, are you kidding me on?
Yeah.
The money that they're getting, the money that they're offering, I think the days of ravaging Scottish football really should be done and finished. And particularly when you see players like Frimpong for what, 13.5 million or something.
Like that, yeah.
Is that how much he left for?
It's round about that figure, I think.
13.5 million to Leverkusen. Yeah. And I'm like, so he can go to Leverkusen, but Nisbet, can he go down to England? Yeah.
I think McGinn's the obvious one, because we sold him for, we will make money when he moves on again, but he went for a couple of million. Can't remember even if the figure was confirmed, but anywhere between 2 and 4 million. Villa, if they sell him, are going to get probably 40 million plus for him. I mean, because of the difference in the market, it's just mental. So
Frimpong, who was marked out of the game recently by Stevenson and by Doogie Tripod, went for 13.5 million.
Aye.
So Hibs, the two players that I mentioned there must be worth about 30 million between them.
Easy.
It's just funny money when you get to that stage, isn't it?
Aye. Right. On that note, we'll probably call it a night then. We will be back tomorrow right after the St Mirren game, hopefully talking about a win. That's with Quick Bang. If you're interested in coming on and sharing your views, give us a shout on Twitter. You'll get this episode of Longbangers on all your podcast players plus YouTube. You'll know that already if you've listened to this point, because you'll have found it. In the meantime, Richard, thanks very much for getting up early in the morning to come on, or staying up late, whichever way around you did it.
Bit of both.
Well,
yeah.
We appreciate it. It's been great having you on. John, thanks for turning up.
Anytime, Matthew. Anytime.
We'll catch you all next time.
Well, they trailed me down when I broke free. I drank all the whiskey in Tennessee. I don't drink what I know